and said, I will never understand how a woman can just give her child away. And I said, well, I'm a birth mom too, which means I've placed a child for adoption, so maybe I can explain it to you. Welcome back to the Grief and Gratitude podcast hosted by me, Raquel McLeod. As always, this will be a safe space for adoption and kinship care conversations that I've cultivated organically through years of lived experience, education, and community. Hopefully you leave here feeling seen or encouraged, but ultimately better equipped to move forward. Boom. That was it. As promised, we are going to talk about different birth mom stories today. For the month of May, I really wanted to focus on the birth mom experience for Mother's Day. And still sometimes when I post about birth moms, I get questions about what a birth mom is. And some people believe that if you birthed a child, you're a birth mom. The terminology just isn't widely known, I suppose. And so I assume if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably already familiar. But just in case you stumbled upon it and adoption or kinship care are new to you, a birth mother is the name given to a woman that has placed a child for adoption. Birth mother isn't a woman that has birthed a child. The birth mother, the natural mother, the first mother. Tummy mom is another term that I've heard used before. Just different ways of saying the biological mother of a child, that when the child has left the custody of that biological parent. So I hope that clears up any confusion. And I just want to dive into it. I had several submissions, not as many as I anticipated. The algorithm has really been killing it, and not in a good way, like literally dead. So I don't know, it's crazy, y'all. On Instagram, I have over 20,000 followers, and sometimes I get 500 story views, so I'm really not sure what's going on with that. Maybe I didn't push it hard enough, but I ended up with 10 submissions, and that is 10 new stories that you've not heard before that I am super excited to share with you. I think I posted 5 or 6 of them on my Substack, which is my weekly newsletter. And the neat thing about the Substack, now that I have the podcast and I run the Instagram page, and I'm trying to figure out how to marry all of these things together so that it's not just a repeat of information on each site, but that it kind of complements. That's the word I'm looking for. I want all of my platforms to complement each other. And so I've been thinking about it, meditating on it, talking to my husband about it, praying about it. I just want direction. I don't want to just keep aimlessly running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I'm from the South, and you'll probably pick that up on some of the phrases that I use. As Grandma says, I put too many irons in the fire. That's another Southern phrase. And essentially that just means I start so many projects that I have a hard time juggling them all. And so I think all of these things can complement each other very well, but thus far, I'm kind of naturally a free spirit, and organizational skills are not my strongest quality, but I'm really trying to cultivate that. I'm trying to be intentional with my time and my energy, like how I'm creating content, how it's helping others, how it's helping our family. For me to dedicate so much time, it needs to benefit us in some way as well. And so that's something I've been putting a lot of time and thought into. And the first 2 podcast episodes, I essentially just retyped all the information that I shared verbally and used that as my newsletter. And I don't think that is efficient. I don't think that that's the best use. And so here is the plan that I've come up with, and I hope you're as excited about it as I am. So my Instagram will be more personal, okay? I just want to share what moments of my life I want to share. Just the joy, the grief, the making sourdough, the visiting with my oldest daughter, the just the little glimmers and the grief. I just recently heard the term glimmer, and it's the opposite of a trigger. So I have triggers, right? Anyone that has experienced trauma has triggers, and some can be more severe than others, but there's some things that just I don't know, you don't even try. It's just like something snaps and you're taken back to that moment or that feeling or that fear. And so the opposite of that, they're calling a glimmer. And that's those moments that just sow joy into your day. So for me, I take our dog Oak on a walk every morning, and for me, that's just a little glimmer. That's sunshine on my skin. That's noticing the flowers or the ladybugs or the rushing water. We're currently by a river, and just the way the sunlight streams through the trees first thing in the morning is just, it seems whimsical, magical, like cinematic almost. And I was taking my phone with me because I love capturing photos of all these moments, and sometimes I feel like I get so caught up in capturing the moment that I don't get to enjoy the moment. So lately I've been leaving my phone at home, and I will just really soak in those moments, those views, those glimmers of joy at the start of my day. From that regard, I want my Instagram to be not just the glimmers and not just the triggers. I want to share the grief and the gratitude of this life that I get to live, and I'll share the resources. I'll share the links I will share the links to the podcasts that I'm producing. I will share if, I'm on someone else's podcast or in a blog or whatever. I will share what I'm doing. I'll share the books that I'm writing. But as far as like the meat, like the educational content, I don't want to use Instagram for that anymore. That's not going to be the bulk of what I share. I just want to share what I want to share. The podcast, what you're listening to right now or watching on, I just went blank, YouTube. I want this to be the meat. I want to talk about, that's funny coming from someone who hasn't eaten meat since I was 9 years old, but the main course, I want this to be where we dive in deep and we talk about all the big things and just get to explore different topics. And then the Substack, if you subscribe to my Substack, that will be the sides, if you will, since we're going with the food theme. So my Instagram is dessert, and you can have dessert before dinner. That's up to you. The podcast will be the main course, and the Substack will be the sides. And what I mean by that is resources. It could be like a list, like a guide, some type of resource for you that will match what we're talking about in the podcast for the week. And so on my Substack, you can be a free subscriber or a paid subscriber, and everyone gets to see everything that I post, free or paid. The difference is if you're a free subscriber, you lose the ability to see those resources after 1 week. If you're a paid subscriber, you have infinite access to any resources that I post. So it is $5 a month or $50 for the year, and you will just have unlimited access to all the sides that I post, if you will. I think that is how I want to structure things moving forward. I know that is how I got more confident, right? I know that is how I want to structure things moving forward, and I think this is going to be a really good shift for me. I'm going to quit, because Instagram's a time suck, right? Social media, that's, and I'm not immune to it. I thought I was. I am not, and I caught myself in the trap of scrolling and wasting so much time. And I don't want to put Instagram away altogether because I've built such a great community there. And since we travel full time, that's my community. Like, we have people in Tennessee that we love, and luckily we get to work in the area infrequently. I think it's raining. It is. So in this, I can hear, kind of like my grandma used to talk about rain on a tin roof, like that was a memory that she had from childhood growing up. And it's kind of similar in a camper. When it rains, it's got that tin roof sound. So I'm not sure if the mic is picking up on it, but I am. I assume it is since these are connected. Anyway, this is how my brain works. I very much run off on tangents, and I have to practice 2 podcasts so that I don't run off on a rabbit trail. And that's also why you will see cuts whenever I edit this post-recording, because sometimes I go off on too many rabbit trails. So now that you understand the purpose of the Instagram, the podcast, and the Substack, the benefit to all 3, and how I'm going to structure those moving forward, I think that is all the updates that I have for you, and let's get into it. So for the month of May, for Mother's Day, I really wanted to put the spotlight on birth moms, because those are stories that we hear less frequently. Even now, as the environment is changing and people are starting to ask and wonder what the full experience of adoption is like, we often hear far less from the birth mothers. And so I posted on my page, if you're a birth mom and you want to share your story, send me a couple paragraphs. These are in no way the full picture, right? Like, I could not share or read the full story for multiple people because it's nuanced, it's long, it's a lot of grief, a lot of gratitude. We're all at different places in our journey. We've all experienced different things, and with the birth mom experience, really with anything in life, our stories often intersect, but they don't always run parallel. In fact, I'd say they never run parallel. There can be a lot of similarities and a lot of intersections, but as far as being the same, it just doesn't happen. That's not life. And so I have 10 different stories that I'm going to read, and then I have some books that I want to share with you guys. The other thing that I did not realize before I announced that we would focus on the birth mom experience for May is also Foster Care Awareness Month. And personally, none of my stories have intersected with foster care. My being in kinship care was done outside of the child welfare system. Our youngest daughter, who is a kinship adoptee, we handled all of that through a family lawyer. It was done outside of the child welfare system. And so my experience with foster care is solely based on the people that I've interacted with since holding space in these areas. And so foster care, I get invited into foster care circles because the foster care system is really pushing kinship care for a host of different reasons. So some birth mothers, even some of the stories that I'm going to share with you today, intersect with foster care because they're birth mothers because of their involvement with the foster care system. I won't be able to make eye contact. I've not memorized these stories. I simply want to read them to you. I want to start by thanking every one of these women for sharing their story. I know it can be difficult. It can feel very vulnerable. And I also know what a blessing it can be to others. And the angle that I wanted to take with sharing these stories is to paint a picture that so many birth moms, most birth moms, are people that you would never imagine having placed a child for adoption. You might work with them, stand next to them in the grocery store, be at a play group or a park with them. Some of these women already have grandchildren that they're interacting with. There's not... We're... There's a very strong stereotype for a lot of people about what a birth mother is and what she isn't. And very rarely do we fit those stereotypes. And so I wanted you to hear from women that just also share pieces of their normal everyday life, the things that they're doing, the things that they like, and then the fact that they're also a birth mom. And so I don't need to keep introducing this. I could talk until I'm blue in the face. I'm just going to start reading. Hi there, my name is Rachel, and I became a birth mom in 1997 to a precious baby boy. I placed through a Christian agency that offered semi-open adoption. His adoption was opened in 2019, and we have met a couple times already and communicate over text weekly. It's glorious. I made a mistake, but he was definitely no mistake. I'm so thankful for his life and so proud of who he has become and the impact that he has made in the world and in his family already. I married in 2000 and now parent 3 kids with my husband. I'm a stay-at-home mom and homeschool my youngest. I love all things nature, photography, music, and travel related. Psalm 139, 13 through 14. You can follow Rachel on Instagram at Portraits of the Valley. I don't know how to transition between these. The next story is from Michaela. My name is Michaela, and I was 19 years old when I placed my sweet baby girl for adoption. I have an open adoption, which I am extremely grateful for. I am able to visit my birth daughter for holidays and whenever I'm feeling like I need a visit. I am able to get to know her, and she is able to get to know me and understand the real reason as to why she was placed for adoption. Adoption is truly the hardest thing I have ever done, but has also been the biggest blessing. I was able to give my sweet baby a life she needed and deserved that I was not able to provide for her at the time. I will forever be grateful for her parents and allowing me to have an open adoption. You can follow Michaela on Instagram at Michaela Whitlock. I'll also add all of these handles down in the description of the podcast and the YouTube video. The next was submitted by Jody. I'm a birth mother to my youngest daughter, age 10. She was adopted because I relinquished my parental rights via my foster care involvement, actively using drugs, and having zero support. Her parents and I have been navigating a semi-open adoption for 8 years now. Today, I have the privilege of parenting my 2 eldest daughters, ages 14 and 20. I would say the hardest part of our adoption story is the lack of choice she currently has. Questions she's not allowed to have answers to, and control far from my reach. In the waiting, I long to hear her voice, celebrate every moment, and weep when I am not given the opportunity to love her the way my entire being aches to do. I hold on to hope more than anything else. Without it, I would be lost in the darkness of my own heart. You can follow Jody on Instagram at mytangledlife_. The next was submitted by Katie. Adoption has always been a part of my culture, but while it's always been a topic I knew about as an adoptee, I didn't fully understand its complexities until I placed 2 children for adoption. Despite the desire to parent, I felt that the expectations for your finances to look a certain way, plus immaturity as a teen, pressured me into believing I wasn't capable of successfully parenting. While I do think about what if, I don't have regrets. I made a decision in an overwhelming time of my life, but I'm active in my kids' lives and watching them thrive. I'm married and currently on the journey to conceive and parent with my husband. I have an organization with another birth mother called the Table DFW, where we have support groups, events, and ways to connect for adoptees and birth parents. My motherhood anthem is heavy and jaded, but despite the hardships, I'm strong and thriving. You can follow Katie on Instagram at Katie DEE88 and her organization at the table DFW. The next is submitted by another Katie, spelt differently. Well, I'll put the handles down below. Weekdays, you can usually find me running around in the background, keeping my office running, and weekdays, you can find me volunteering in the nursery or on the production team at church. Lately, I've been preparing for the launch of my new Birthmom community group. However, in my free time, you can probably find me reading at a dog-sitting client's house. At 21, I found myself pregnant and in no way ready to parent, so the birth father and I made an adoption plan. I've been blessed to have an open adoption from the start, and my daughter has grown up to know me and build a relationship. Several years after placement, I connected with other birth moms and found my support tribe. Now I want to provide that support for birth moms who find themselves on isolated journeys like I was. You can follow Katie on Instagram at Coffee Tattoos. The next is submitted by May Bear. I became pregnant at 38 while already parenting my two sons. Working as a registered nurse, my sons were 9 and 11. My mother gave my information to church folks, unbeknownst to me, and they contacted me, made me feel like we would be like family. We all know my son's bio father would never consent, but we forged ahead with expert adoption attorneys. After a year of my son being with them and no adoption in sight yet, I withdrew my consent as well after seeing how they truly viewed me and my son's father. My son is 5.5 now and still not adopted, but he's always lived with his potential adoptive parents 1,000 miles away. I got supervised Zoom visits for a few years, but I couldn't continue to pay, so those have dwindled away. I don't expect he'll ever be returned. However, I do plan to shout from the rooftops and empower mothers to be fully informed before placing their child. They have temporary custody renewed by Oklahoma judges continually while simultaneously refusing to rule on my motion to revoke consent I filed over 4 years ago. You can follow Maybear on Instagram at banner.bear. The next story is submitted by Ashley. My birth son and I became a part of an open adoption when he was born on January 2nd, 2014. I found out I was pregnant about 6 months into the pregnancy and did not have much time to figure anything out. I felt my best choice was adoption. It is very surreal to say today I made a decision back then that would bring me all sorts of emotions throughout my journey. My decision gave me love from a whole different level and at the same time ambiguous grief. I have gained an extended family that love me for who I am and love my birth son more than anything. I am blessed to experience this journey with those who mean the most to me. Today I work a full-time job as an event manager and trying my best to master an adult life. I am currently the board president for Empower Alliance. We provide community and support for birth parents. Traveling, being around my cat, and attending concerts makes me feel alive. You can follow Ashley on Instagram at OGsAshley. The next story was submitted by Kelly. I am now considered retired, even though I spent the majority of my working years home raising 6 children. Many of those years also homeschooling. I love photography, which overflows to all my other hobbies. I'm learning golf, and you can usually find my camera hidden in my golf cart somewhere just in case I need it. I've been married for almost 43 years, and most of our traveling includes visiting kids and grandkids. 5 years ago, we gained 6 more grandchildren when my first daughter found me. I became pregnant with her at age 16, and being in the 70s, it seemed closed adoption was my only option. Even as I've carried that loss for more than 45 years, God is teaching me and healing me. Reunion after 40 years of knowing nothing about her has been a roller coaster, but it's not a ride I want to get off of. I had to work through feelings of shame and guilt that resurfaced. Grief became the emotion I spent much time trying to figure out. God is doing a healing work, restoring what was lost and growing my faith. I'm definitely honored to be a part of her life, and my prayer is we continue traveling this reunion road together for the rest of our lives. You can follow Kelly on Instagram at KPMom in Texas, and you can find a link to her blog there in the bio, and I'll also link that in the description. The next story is submitted by Pua. I am blessed to share my life with my soulmate, 3 sassy dogs, and a shared passion for Star Trek. While our journey to grow our family has been challenging, we are currently going through IVF with high hopes and unwavering optimism. My journey as a birth mom began at the age of 17 when I found myself giving birth to my son all alone in my bathroom. With a lack of support or resources at hand, I had no choice but to consider adoption. I was unaware of the importance of self-advocacy or that I had a voice in determining the type adoption that suited me best. I'm grateful that it turned out to be an open adoption, since it has allowed me to stay in touch with my son's family for the past 11 years and even to celebrate milestones like my wedding, where he was present. Although my birth mom journey has been challenging, filled with grief, shame, acceptance, healing, and continuous growth, watching my son grow into a fine young man and thrive with his siblings has been a source of immense joy and pride. You can follow Pua on Instagram at MisrasPuaHD. And the last story that I'm going to read today was submitted by Tracy Perkins. She says, I was a 25-year-old single mother. As the 1970s song said, I was looking for love in all the wrong places. My 4-year-old and I were living in a 2-room apartment. Our kitchen was in our living room or bedroom, whichever way we arranged the apartment. It was furnished and all I could afford. I wasn't the brightest with money, quite selfish really. I got pregnant. Abortion wasn't an option in my heart and mind. So I explained to my daughter that God had put a baby in mommy's belly, but we weren't going to keep it. We were giving it to a family who couldn't have a baby of their own. It was a private adoption, so my son, I only knew he was a he because I had to sign circumcision papers, left the hospital with his new parents. I never saw him, never heard him cry, never met face to face with these people I was gifting my child to. For 27 years, I spent his birthday thinking, is he healthy? Is he happy? Did they tell him about me? Did he hate me? I had always tried to prepare for the phone call or the knock on the door with a young man saying, I think you are my mother. I think I am your son. Why did you give me away? What I got instead was a Facebook message on January 6th, 2011, and the first words were, I don't rightly know how to say this, but my name is, and I think you might be my mother. It was one of those rare occasions when I was speechless. April 14th, 2011, I was able to tell my son for the first time in 28 years, I love you, son. Mother's Day weekend that same year, I felt his arms envelop me in a big bear hug, smelled his smell, heard his voice, felt his forgiveness that I needed but wasn't necessary in his eyes. We have an amazing relationship now. Even his adopted family has adopted me and my family. Today I am retired. My daughter and son have an amazing relationship. My son has another family to love him unconditionally. So much of him reflects my dad, who passed away in 2021. I'm blessed. I was able to give another woman the joy of motherhood. My accident was God's purpose for an amazing man. Submitted by Tracy Perkins. There's no handles, no anything to share. But wow, you guys. I'm so thankful that these women chose to share their stories. It's one thing to hear mine, but to realize that there are hundreds of thousands of more stories out there, and a lot of them similar, all of them different. And so I'm glad that you tuned in to listen to a few more today. On my newsletter, my Substack newsletter, I put a poll up to ask, besides me and besides the stories that I just shared, how many of you had spoke with another birth mom ever before, not on the internet. I'm just really grateful for the women that chose to share their stories. I think it's so valuable that you hear from more than just my perspective. Some people have told me I'm the only birth mother they've ever spoke with, and that's understandable. It's really difficult to share your birth mom experience, not only because of all the grief that is intertwined with it, but because of the stigmas, because of the shame. The whole reason that I'm on this journey is because I had a video go viral of me with my birth daughter and explaining that I had made an adoption plan, that we were in an open adoption, that we were in reunion, and, getting to spend this time together. And the amount of hate and just vile, ignorant comments that I received made me super aware of just how desperate we needed accurate education on the birth mom experience. And so that's what launched all of this. That's why I'm here today sharing this with you now. So I'm not surprised that so many people haven't heard from or spoke to other birth moms. The truth is they have spoke to other birth moms, they just didn't know it, because it's hard to share something that you have seen others get tore apart for. Just like in Jody's story, I was explaining that a lot of times foster care intersects with adoption and being a birth mom, and so Jody had shared her experience of being a birth mom because of her involvement with foster care. And so with May being Foster Care Awareness Month, and with so many birth mom stories intersecting with the foster care system, I have a stack of books. Not all of them are foster related, but I did include them, and I wanted to explain why I included them, even if the main characters in these books are not specifically birth moms. This was the hardest book that I've written. So if you don't know, I have 4 published children's books that are all adoption and kinship care related. And this is the latest one that I published, and it's called Tell Me My Story, How Does Adoption Impact Siblings? And this is written from the perspective of my 13-year-old processing the fact that her oldest sister was placed for adoption. And so this is a great book for birth mothers who are parenting subsequent children who don't understand why one child was placed for adoption, but the parent is able to parent more kids. There's one page that says, Cadence thought about everything Mama had just said, but Mama, if you're able to take care of me and Marie, can't Paige just come home now? Mama placed her hands over her heart. I know you love your sister so much. I love her so much too, but I'm her birth mother. She is home with her mama and daddy, and they also love her. So it explores all the hard questions that kids may have about a sibling that had been placed for adoption. And you can find that on Amazon. If you just search Raquel McLeod, it'll bring all my books up. This one is called How Does Adoption Impact Siblings? Again, a great tool for birth mothers who are parenting other children. Another children's book that includes a birth mom is Lily's Story. And I happened upon this book at a foster adoption conference that I went to. And the woman who wrote it is I believe a caseworker. She's involved with the system in some way, and she wanted to make a book that helped children going into care just understand what was going on or feel seen. And this one It starts, Lily lived in a home with lots of fighting. Her mommy and daddy hurt each other and yelled mean things. Lily sometimes got scared and hid under the covers. And it so it goes from that to a social worker coming up, and then it also talks about visits with her birth mom. That's not right. I don't even always say things right. So it wouldn't be her birth mom because she was not placed for adoption. So this would just be her mom. But it's visits with her biological mother while she is in the foster care system. And so I paused because I was going to cut that out and make it right. But it's probably good for you to know that I don't always say the right things. Sometimes I get in my own head, and it's not that I'm trying to be ignorant. The right thing doesn't always come out. So the mother in Lily's story is not a birth mom. She's the biological mom. Lily is in care and getting to visit with mom. And so that's the only 2 children's books that I have to promote. I do have a resource on my website called The Bookshelf, and I have started a collection of books that cover hard topics from adoption to kinship care to parental incarceration to homelessness. Kids' books with hard topics, and they're all rated on a heart system instead of stars because it's matters of the heart, right? So if you go to the bookshelf, you'll find a bunch of books linked, and it'll tell you what they address. But moving on, I have some adult books that I want to share. And if you do not know Michelle Thorne, you should. She so Delivered is somewhat of her memoir. It's a story of her unexpected pregnancy and her experience making an adoption plan and walking through that. And then she also writes fiction books that have birth mom characters in them, and oh my word, I could not put these down. They are so good and so accurate. And a book that I don't own but I read that includes a birth mom, very popular author right now, Colleen Hoover, and one of her books is called Reminders of Him, and it includes a birth mom perspective, and so well done. Also could not put that book down. Highly recommend. And then the other 2 books that don't specifically deal with birth mothers is Fostered by Tori Hope Peterson. Such a good book, her experience in the foster care system, and she does talk about her birth mom and just her entire experience. And then Foster the Family by Jamie Finn. I just started this. I've followed her account on Instagram for a while, and one of my followers sent me this book, and I didn't want to put it down yesterday. I had to manage my time, but I just opened it up yesterday. It's been a great read so far, and just from the content that she shares on Instagram, I know that she loves and supports birth family, and so also a good book to add to your library. I wore this shirt on purpose. It says, "Choose kindness." At the end of the day, it's so easy to judge someone's decision based on a few facts, but we hardly ever know the full story. And so, similar to the quote that I shared at the end of last week's podcast by Marjorie Hinkle, "There's not a person you wouldn't love if you knew their whole story." I just think it is incredibly valuable to choose kindness first, before making assumptions, before condemning them. Just choose kindness. I mean, what do we have to lose by just being kind to those that we encounter? And so I encourage you, instead of looking at adoptees and talking to adoptive parents with contempt for the birth mothers, consider that they have a whole story that you don't know. People are very quick to judge, and I'll tell you, I'll leave you with this story. We were at a campground in the Outer Banks. So for those that don't know yet, we travel full time. We have for 6 years now. We follow my husband's work, and so we live in our camper and we meet new people all the time, because typically the areas that we stay in are connected to, in the Outer Banks it was a national seashore, but typically we're in national parks doing work for the National Park Service. And so the people that we meet are not full-time camping in spots for months at a time. If they are full-timers, they're on a rotation where they travel every couple of weeks, and most people are just visiting, they're vacationing. So we meet a lot of new people, and our youngest went through a phase where she would introduce herself to people in a way that would elicit a reaction. She very much liked the shock factor of her story. So upon meeting a child, she would introduce herself to the parent and just simply say, "Hi, I'm adopted. This is my mom, but really she's my sister, but she's my mom because she adopted me. Okay, bye." And then she would run off. And so that would leave the person staring at me like, I don't know what to say. So I got very good at discussing these topics right off the bat with strangers, because she would put me in a position to. And I'll never forget, we were in the Outer Banks. It was a super sweet family. We had been parked next to each other for several days. The kids had been playing and having a great time. And the grandma came to visit and stay for a couple days. And she did that same bit on the grandma and then ran off to play with the kids. And the grandma looked at me and just had this disgusted look on her face and said, "I will never understand how a woman can just give her child away." And I said, "Well, I'm a birth mom too, which means I've placed a child for adoption, so maybe I can explain it to you." The look on her face of sheer horror, the whole, "oh no, I just stuck my foot in my mouth" moment. And then she immediately started backpedaling and apologizing. And but that's it, right? Like, we have these preconceived notions of someone, and then we meet them. And what if it's someone that we've met, we've liked, we've built this relationship with, we respect, and then we find out that this bias that we've held toward this group of people includes this person that we actually like. And so that's kind of what happened in that moment. Even though it had just been a quick meeting, she had already spoke to me a few times. She enjoyed conversation with me. And then she just, in one sentence, tore down a group of people that I was a part of because she didn't understand it. And so I could have ignored it. I could have not said anything. I could have done a number of things, but I knew in that moment I needed to speak up and I needed to set the record straight, and so that is why it is so incredibly valuable to hold your opinions loosely, because you never know what the full story is. And so, yeah, I like sharing that story when we talk about the biases that people hold for birth mothers, because it was just a very immediate, quick, in the moment reaction that allowed me to see the switch. Whenever you put a face to a group of people, when you put a heart and a soul to this bias that you've held for so long. Last week, I promised that I would sign off with a good quote every week. I'm going to have to find a quote. I don't know if that's going to actually be my sign off or not, but I don't have any better ideas. Michelle Thorne's book, Both Cleaving and Cleaving. Great book, by the way. She starts with a quote from Brene Brown that says, "Courage starts with showing up and letting ourselves be seen." So I think that fits perfectly with the story that I just shared. I hope to see you guys next week. Thanks for tuning in. Go to my website for all these book recommendations, and I'll see you guys next week.